Hey there, my gorgeous friends on the internet. Welcome back to another tutorial episode. Breadcrumbs, you know it? That's what we're gonna do today, which essentially is a navigation that keeps track of where you're on the page, but we're gonna make it nice and fancy, super simple, super sexy. It's one of those things that's really good to have in your repertoire so you know how to build it out. So before we get going, I do want to thank today's sponsor, Brilliant. Speaking of things that make you smarter, unlike whatever I'm gonna code here in just a second, today's sponsor, Brilliant. Brilliant helps you get smarter every day with thousands of interactive lessons in math, science, programming, data analysis, and even AI. Their programming courses are actually brilliant. See what I did there? They help you think like a programmer by breaking down complex problems into manageable chunks. You know, the opposite of what I do when I try to build out an entire app in one 500-line function. I highly recommend their course Thinking in Code. It's just a great way to get started with programming, but also kind of understand the core concepts and kind of how to approach solving problems. So to try everything Brilliant has to offer for a full free 30 days, visit brilliant.org/developedbyed, or you can optionally scan the QR code on the screen. You also get 20% off your annual subscription, which is awesome. So click the link in the description down below, and thank you so much, Brilliant, for sponsoring this episode. Okay, awesome. Let's begin. So for this tutorial, I'm going to be using TanStack Start, but feel free to use Next.js or React Router or any other JavaScript framework. It'll work just fine. All we really need here is to be able to track the URL somehow to kind of extract the search params, but that's pretty much it. And to get started really quickly, I'm going to be using the shadcn's Breadcrumb here, which has a bit of styling already added to it, which is really cool. So you can add this with npx shadcn at latest. Okay, so that's what we're going to be using as the base component here to animate. We're going to be using Framer Motion for that. So make sure you install this as well. It's been going through some changes recently, so it's not Framer Motion anymore, it's Motion. And then you can do Motion/React to be able to access, all the how it used to work before, basically. So these are the two key components that we're going to be using. So this is what shadcn installs you, but I made some little changes here. One is I imported motion here, and I essentially wrapped all my components in a M tag. So I renamed motion as M. I like to do that so it's shorter here, so I don't have to type everything out. But that's pretty much it. The only other change I made here is that by default here, this is going to be something like this. It's going to be react.component props or something like that. So what we want to do is essentially change that to HTML motion props instead. And this way you can pass down the animate and the opacity and all that good stuff that Framer Motion gives you. So I pretty much did that for the breadcrumb, which is the nav. The breadcrumb list here is going to be an ordered list. And that's pretty much it. The only really important thing here is to have this inline flex, and I'll show you why. And that's pretty much it. We have the breadcrumb item, which I believe is just an li tag here. Again, it's just got a little bit of gap. I'm just, again, passing down the HTML motion props here, which is the most important bit. And then finally, we have a link. It does something with Radix UI here where you can pass down, another component here. So it'll just get the styles from it, which is going to be really cool. The separator here as well, it just has a SVG in it with a chevron of right. That's it. That's all we need. Now, as you can see, I have a function here called main_crumb, and basically I'm putting this in the root of my application. So if you're in Next.js or whatever, you're going to have something similar here where you can just render it out like this besides your children. All right, so children here represents every single page on your application, and the main_crumb is just sitting on top there. And now with this, what we can do is simply depending which page we hop on, we can simply detect based on the path name, right? So we can filter everything out. So the way we're going to do this is let's do it like this. If we're on the home page here, I don't want to see it at all. It makes no purpose to just have /home there. It's just going to look quite weird. But if I go to /courses, I do want to see /home/courses. And then again, the deeper we go. And this way we can even conditionally render, so I can make this only render on my courses pages. So you have a bit of flexibility. So let's do that. So as you can see, it's main_crumb here, so it's going to display everywhere right now. But again, I only want to display it as soon as we get to /courses. And in TanStack Start, you can pull out the location simply by calling use location like that. And then we can do a simple check. We can say if there's no location.pathname.starts with, and we want to make sure it starts with courses, that's why I have here, then I'm simply just going to return null. Okay, so just with that simple line, we should be able to, look at that, no main crumbs here on the main page. But if we go to /courses, it pops up. So there we go, that works. And then every subsequent slash here that we add is still gonna make it pop up, because that's what it's mainly looking at, the first slash courses there. Next up, what I want to do is create a function that essentially looks at the path name and is going to try to figure out where we are, which one's active, and also which one should be included and which one should not. So let's go here and create that. So it's going to be a simple function. There we go. Set this equal to, it's going to be a function. And let's also type this function. So I'm going to create an interface up here, and it's going to be super simple. It's just going to hold like the label of the segment, the href where it should go, any params that it should hold. This is going to be a record, and if it's active. So that's just going to be a simple true or false Boolean here. Okay, so let's go down here, jump over here, and we are going to say this is the breadcrumb segment, and this is going to be an array type because we're going to push more and more in here. So let's expand this out. So now in here, I want the home to always show up. So what we can do is say segments like that is equal to, and the type for this is also going to be the breadcrumb segment like that, an array type. And we're going to set it equal to, and by default, it's going to hold a label of home and a href of slash, right? You can add everything after here, but I'm just going to keep it nice and simple. Okay, there we go. So that's our first one. It's going to throw an error for now. That's fine. We're going to say segments dot push. And this is how you can push in a new one, since we're on the courses page as well. We can say label courses. And then here we can say href is going to go to slash courses. And finally, we can also set the is active here. And we need to essentially check the segments and the path name segments. So we haven't done that yet. So let's just quickly go up here, and so instead, let's split it by the slash and see if that does it. So now if we go here and check, now we should only have 4, which is great. So slash courses, course, and then modern JavaScript there. Okay, now yours might be different or whatever, but you should have kind of the same format, which is what's really important. And finally here, what I can also do is say filter like that, and I can pass in a Boolean. Now that we added the Boolean here, as you can see, this first value here, which is an empty string, is going to be removed because you're filtering out any value that is falsy, right? So there we go. Now when you refresh, you only have these 3, which is kind of what we want anyway. Okay, lovely. So we are making good steps. Now we can uncomment this out. And now that we have our segments, we can hook this up. So all we need to check here is if the path segments equals to the courses segments, right? And in our case, that was, well, we can have a simple look, right? So if we go here, refresh, right? It's the first one, and we have 1. So path segments, what we can do is say if path segments dot length triple equals to 1, then that should be active. And now in here, I'm just going to add 2 more. So this one is going to check the path segments again. It's going to make sure it's bigger or equal than 3, and the path segments 1 triple equals course. So we got to make sure we're still on the course page. And then here, I'm also adding that the slug also exists. So again, in my case here, this is going to have a slug. So I need to kind of extract it somehow. So that's why I'm using the params here. And that way I can simply say const slug. I can just do param slug here, actually. So let's do params.slug ID. And down here, we can also do params.slug ID. So there we go. If our conditions are met, we simply push in a new segment here, and then we add the label, we add the correct href to it, and the params down here. And that's pretty much it. And then you can keep going deeper and deeper. And finally here, after we build the crumbs, we're simply returning all the segments. So here at the bottom, then you can say something like breadcrumbs is equal to build breadcrumbs. There we go. And that should give you everything you need. Okay, now at the bottom here, let's remove this and actually add all of our HTML here, right? So let's initialize the breadcrumb. That's the first one. Then we're going to do the breadcrumb list like that. And now here we need to essentially loop over. So we're going to say breadcrumbs.map over each crumb. And then, well, do I need the index? I'll probably need the index here as well. There we go. And let's return. I'll do a motion div here. So let's import that really quickly. We're going to say import motion as m from motion/react. That's how you can get it in. Okay. We'll go to the bottom here. M dot what should we make this? Let's make it a div. Pop this open. We gotta make sure we also have a key on this. So let's do crumb dot href. That's gonna be unique, so that's fine to pass in this case. And now in here, what I'm gonna do is essentially check the index. If the index is bigger than 0, that means we can add the little arrow symbol there. So we're gonna say and open this up, and we're gonna say breadcrumb selector. And after that, we are gonna create the breadcrumb item as well. So let's add that in. There we go. And in here, I'm gonna check if the segment, and now in here, we can simply add a link tag. So let's import that from TanStack router like that. And here we're just gonna say crumb dot label, right? That's what we're gonna render. And then here the link is gonna be 2, and we're gonna say crumb dot href, right? That's where we wanna go. And we can also pass the params down here, which is gonna come from the segment crumb, I called it, dot params. There we go, lovely. And you can also customize this a little bit. As you can see, I only render out the link if it has a href. Otherwise, I just render out the span. And you can customize this more if you want to like highlight stuff now that you have the is active section. But now, like, see, I can click backwards. This is not styled nicely. But when I'm on the last page here, as you can see, I cannot click on it. There's like no point to click on it. But if I'm here, then I can go back, right? I can click on the back buttons. That works fine. One more thing is this is weird how it looks, and it also needs to like be active, actually be like a bit more highlighted than that. So let's fix all of that. Let's go back to our code. We'll just need a bit of styling, really. Let's start adding some styling. So I'm gonna go to the breadcrumb here, and I'm gonna add, let's do a margin bottom of 4. Then we're gonna go to the mdiv here, and we're gonna add a class name. And here, essentially, I want to do flex with items of center. So all those arrows are lined nicely. Let's have a look now. There we go. They're aligned really nice. So we can just click, 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 and also go back. Look at that, all the progress we're making. This is fantastic. Let's simply go to the breadcrumb item here. I'm gonna add a class name. I'm gonna be using the cn merging class. It just merges a couple of CSS classes together. That's all it does. But what I wanna do here is essentially check. So let's do a curly brackets like that. I wanna check for the crumb. If it's active here, then I wanna change the color of this. So I'm gonna do question mark. And let's do text foreground. Otherwise, this is gonna be a text muted foreground. Okay, there we go. That's how you add all the highlighting. So let's have a look now. There you go, it's highlighted. So when we go there, that's highlighted. There we go, look at that, awesome. And finally, let's hook up the animation. That's the most fun thing. And honestly, it's also the most could be frustrating thing. In frame motion, when you do these layout animations, you run into all of these sorts of funny little bugs. So hopefully I can show you one or two here, but yeah, let's go. So what I want to do is essentially animate the layout, right? So when I click here, this should like automatically expand out and also fade these in and fade them out. So we can use something called a layout group from Framer Motion. So let's import this layout group. And there we go. And let's wrap this inside the whole breadcrumb list. There we go. Let's hit save. Let's also remove this little empty line here. Now let's define some animations on the breadcrumb item. So I'm going to start with the initial being on 0. I'm going to animate it in, but I'm also going to add a little delay at the beginning when I'm animating it in, and also an exit with the opacity of 0. Okay, so if we have a look now, as you can see, the layout again still like jumps into place first, and then that fades in, which is fine. But everything else works really nicely. As you can see, the exit animation doesn't work. So by default, if you just add an exit animation here to your motion tab, it's not going to fire. You need to add an animate presence that essentially detects the changes to animate those in and out. So what we can do is essentially wrap this where you're looping over everything here into an animate presence. Animate presence like that. So let's pop that open and wrap this whole thing around. There we go. Let's hit save and let's have a look now. So now when we refresh, as you can see, we're getting the fade in animation, which is really nice. And when we go back as well, the layout still doesn't work. And one more thing, when we refresh here, I don't want this to pop up like that. That looks a bit awful in my opinion. So what you can do is on the animate presence itself, you can set the initial to false, and that's gonna disable it. So look at that now. And now when I refresh, see, it just stays the same. That's great. Now the breadcrumb selector here, I did something quite similar. I just set the initial to opacity 0, but I also moved it a bit to the left. So x -5, and then we move x back to 0, and also transition that a little bit. So now if we have a look here, when we go, as you can see, we get the nice arrow animation as well coming in there. That's super cool. Looks like the arrow is not animating out. That's because we don't have an exit on it. So let's do an exit animation as well. And we're gonna set the opacity back to 0, okay? As you can see, the X icon there fades out a little bit after, and I don't really want that. I kind of want everything to happen at the same time. So what we can do is essentially get rid of the exit from here. We don't need it here and here. Instead, we can just apply it to the whole like div section up here, right? So let's do that instead. So let's just modify this a little bit. We'll pop in the initial here, opacity 0 to opacity 1 with a little bit of delay. And then down at the separator, we essentially add a bit of a stronger delay here, so it comes in right after that. And then on the actual breadcrumb item now, we don't need any of these. So let's just remove it and keep it nice and simple. So this way now, if we have a look, let's do a refresh. There we go. They all fade out nicely at the same time, but when it comes in, the arrow comes in just a tad bit later, which looks really cool. And last but not least, what we can do now is simply head over to the div that you're looping over, and you just have to add the layout prop to it. That's going to let Framer Motion know that these elements are going to come in and out, and they need to switch up their position. Let's give it a go now. It's still not working. That's because this also needs a layout here. So go back to the parent element, the breadcrumb list, and let's also add it there. Let's see if that works. So click and look at that. How gorgeous does that look? There we go. With just a couple of simple steps, we managed to create this really nice looking little breadcrumb. Now, there's another little bug here. If you don't, so we added the layout here. You're like, why do we need to add this twice? If I don't add it there, check this out. You're gonna get this weird wonky effect. See how like the text kind of wobbles there like that? That's because this also needs a layout. Knows how to handle it. Here you can do something like by the position of it, you can like limit it. Now, if I remove the layout here on the mdiv, as you can see, you're going to get this weird behavior. So that's why you're going to make sure you have it on there. Otherwise, you're going to get this weird squishing and squashing. So any items in your website that have this weird issue with Framer Motion, add a layout to it, and that's going to fix it. There we go. So let's refresh. It needs a refresh, and now it works fine. Now, there's another little bug here. It's only if you play around with this a lot, you'll like find these little problems. If I zoom in here, look, if I click, that's fine. But sometimes, hold on, keep an eye on this, okay? Sometimes you get this little jagginess here where the shift left and right a tad little bit. It might be a bit hard to tell. Look there, it shifted again. Shifted. I ended up finding that if you do a display block on this, it works fine. So if I go here and say, where did we? I think I did it on the breadcrumbs list. Yeah, here we did inline flex. If I do something like block, you're not getting this issue anymore. So let me show you there. Even though this is like falling down now, but no like weird jagginess is going on. And I essentially found out that it's because the actual breadcrumb items don't have a width to it. And then Framer Motion is just like, gets really confused about it. So the fix I found is we can put it back to inline flex. This is essentially when you want this to like grow in size, right? So that works fine. But again, the jagginess is there. So what you can do is let's go back to our main crumb here, and we just need to add a minimum width to it. So I'll go on the div here. I'm going to say min width, and I'm going to say something like 48 pixels. Okay, that's it. Save. All right, just something that fits enough in there. And as you can see, it doesn't really make that much of a difference here. But now when I click around, might need to refresh. See, you're not getting any shifting now. And that just looks super nice and clean now. So yeah, I like that. That's pretty cool. So there we go. That's it. That's how you can create a simple breadcrumb animation here in just a couple of easy steps. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Drop a little love. You can drop a love, but drop a sub. And yeah, I'll catch you guys next time on the stream, probably tomorrow or the next day. We're going to keep continuing with the NeoVim stuff. And also I'm doing the fast typing as well. So we're going to have a lot of fun. So if you want to come in and say hi and say a message, yeah, I'll see you there. All right, take care.